So currently on Rotten Tomatoes, the Super Mario Bros. Movie has 57% critics rating and a 96% audience score. For those of you who may not be so good at math, that's a pretty big difference. The Super Mario Bros. Movie has been out for over a week now, and people are still a little bit puzzled on why critics hate this movie so much and why audiences love it. And in today's video, I'm going to explain to you kind of my thoughts on the Super Mario Bros. Movie since I just saw it recently, and as well as explain to you why audiences love this movie and critics don't really care for it all that much. So this movie has had quite the emotional roller coaster from when it was first announced to now it being released in theaters worldwide and having the biggest opening weekend for an animated movie ever. That's a pretty crazy number, beating out Frozen 2, which of course is one of the biggest franchises of all time. So why is this movie doing so well, and why do people love it so much, and the critics maybe not as much? Now, I'd kind of like to say right off the bat, I am a firm believer in the idea of you should watch a movie for yourself to decide what your opinions are on it. Don't listen to anybody else or let any other human being decide what your opinion should be on a particular movie. So me, for one, I don't really care what Rotten Tomatoes says about any movie ever, because to me the idea of a certain group of people being able to dictate which movies are good to see or which ones are bad to see is really just a stupid idea, like the Oscars. I really don't love the idea of that. But it is really a vanity number for, studios to be able to say, this has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, 90% of critics love it, or whatever, So it's obviously a big thing in our culture. And currently, the Super Mario Bros. Movie has 57% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you're someone who saw the movie and loved it and walked out of the theater saying, how could anyone not like that? Then I would say you played the Super Mario video games and you're a rational human being, which means that you've played at least a little bit of Mario in your life, like everyone has. You're not a stone cold, emotionless shell of a human being like the critics are, who watch this movie and went, this makes no sense, I don't like this. Whereas an audience member, your average human being who has a life, who has played a Mario video game before, in the movie there was at least something in there, some reference that it made, some joke that it had, or some item that was in the movie that made you go, oh, I remember that. I remember that from this game that I played that came out this time. I remember playing it, or all that, and it did put a smile on your face, because I, for one, walked out of this movie with a huge grin on my face. I had such a nice time. This movie is so entertaining from beginning to end, and it brings up a topic that I kind of think is important in today's culture when it comes to movies, and that is that audiences want to be entertained. We don't want to just sit there and have a message or a big statement made all the time. I think that there is an art to merely entertaining an audience. And there's something pure about that. A movie that is made for the sole purpose of putting smiles on people's faces and having them walk out of the theater with a good feeling. Not really having some kind of major political or emotional idea explored. In fact, in this movie, it is not emotional at all. There's some emotional undertones. It gets a little bit heartfelt sometimes. There's a little bit of emotion in there, specifically as it relates to Mario and his brother Luigi. But overall, this movie is not going to make you cry or have any sad emotions whatsoever. What is it trying to do? It's trying to entertain you. And as I said, I think there is an art to entertaining people. A lot of people are getting turned off by the big Marvel dumb blockbusters nowadays. And hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a 16-year-old teenage boy. Of course I love my big dumb blockbusters where people are just punching each other in the face. Big CGI fight scenes. Who doesn't love that? Someone my age. But people are starting to get a little burnt out on just the same thing over and over again. And I agree. I'm a diehard Marvel fan, so I'm going to watch everything that they put out. But recently, they've been putting out the same thing. And nobody wants to watch the same thing over and over again, especially when you're paying to see it in the movie theater, just repackaged with different characters or different music or something like that. But the Super Mario Bros. Movie is a movie that is not made for critics whatsoever. If you go into this movie, I would expect you to have played a Mario game before in your life. Why? Because Mario is one of the biggest video game franchises ever. So being a rational human being, you probably have played a Mario game before. And if you have, then you went into this movie, watched it, and probably got some big enjoyment out of it. Is it the most amazing movie ever? No. Is it the most perfect movie ever? No, but no movie is perfect. This movie is trying to entertain, and it succeeds at that on every level. Now, when this movie was first announced, that Illumination was making a Mario movie, everybody on the internet flipped out, and rightfully so. Why? Because what other movies has Illumination made? Despicable Me, which was a great animated movie and arguably, their best that they've ever done. But they also made Minions, Despicable Me 2 and 3, which I like Despicable Me 2, not everyone does. Despicable Me 2 and 3, Minions, Secret Life of Pets. They make these movies that generally, the general consensus is that they don't really have a lot of substance to them other than like talking animals and catchy pop songs and like dance numbers. Not a whole lot of substance to them. There's not a whole lot there other than just like mindless. I guess it's entertainment, but even then their movies haven't been exactly 100% entertaining in the best ways possible. Just aiming for the youngest possible audience, the largest possible demographic, just aiming for these like I enjoyed seeing, the movie about animals are literally singing pop songs to each other. That's the plot of the movie, just an excuse for Illumination to use their bag of tricks on it. I enjoyed that movie. I thought there was some heart and some substance to be had there, but most people didn't and thought it was just a like bland, mediocre, lifeless movie. And I think some people are saying that about Super Mario Brothers as well. So when they announced Illumination was making it, people freaked out and thought they were going to do the same thing. But they also partnered with Nintendo, and I think that's an important part of why this movie is the way it is, because Nintendo was breathing down Illumination's necks, kind of saying you have to get this right. And when they announced the cast for this movie, everybody flipped out even more because they learned that Chris Pratt was going to be playing Mario. And Mario is famously Italian in the video games. And everyone's like, oh, wow, he's not going to be Italian. That's weird. I don't understand that. But you watch the movie, and Chris Pratt as Mario pretty much instantly was out of my mind within the first couple of minutes of him speaking. Now, I do think that Chris Pratt's Brooklyn accent is very on and off throughout the movie. Like, the amount of accent that he has varies from sentence to sentence. But overall, I didn't mind it that much. So that really wasn't an issue. And the plot is very thin, and it also moves from plot point to plot point extremely quickly at breakneck speed. I was a little taken aback once we get into the back half of the movie, into like the third act and stuff. I was like, whoa, we're already here. We reached this point extremely quickly. I don't know if this is the best like move or how I would have taken this. So it moves at a breakneck speed. But what does that mean? That means there's no points where the movie lulls, where the movie drags, where there's any boring parts, where there was never a part in this movie where I was sitting there going, well, this is boring, or I want this to end. Even when it stops to take a little bit of a breather, which doesn't happen very often because the movie is so fast, it clocks in at around an hour and a half. It's short. I think it should have been a little longer in order to let certain plot lines breathe a little bit, because it does move extremely quickly. But even when it does stop to take a breather for just a second, it's never boring. The movie is entertaining. There's laughs to be had. Are the jokes that are in this movie pretty recognizable and like pretty common jokes? Sure, I'll give you that one. But what this movie is not a lifeless cash grab, just churned out for the purpose of making as much money as possible. Sure, the amount of celebrities in this movie is obviously an attempt at getting more publicity, and that certainly served the movie. Certainly that played a factor into it, and obviously there was an intent of making money here, as there is in any movie. If you're putting millions of dollars into a movie, you obviously expect to make some back. But this movie has so many references to all of the Mario video games. It's so many little details and Easter eggs and so many fun stuff referencing the video games that it was obviously made with passion from people who are real people with intent of making a fun movie to entertain. And as I've been saying, the reason why critics hate this movie and audiences love it is because audiences want to be entertained. And audiences who have played the Mario video games showed up for this movie and were not disappointed with the number of references to these video games that they grew up loving. And critics are not looking for a movie that has tons of fun references to these video games that they love. They're looking for a movie with a great, profound story, a movie with all these deep themes and emotions, and they don't really accept a movie for just being entertaining. And I think there is an art to entertaining an audience. Say what you will about the MCU or all these big blockbusters that are coming out that are just CGI punches in the face and all that stuff and just explosions and all this stuff with not a whole lot of real story. Now, lately, the MCU hasn't been as entertaining because they haven't been as thoughtful about their products. Do they feel like products rather than films half the time? Sure. But are they entertaining an audience? And if they are, is there still an art to that? Because film is a type of art where a human being is creating something to where they can express their emotions or draw out emotions of their audience. So, if you make a movie like the Super Mario Brothers movie, a movie that is sole purpose to draw pleasant and happy and joyful emotions out of an audience, doesn't matter how great your plot is, if your plot is making people happy and putting smiles on people's faces, especially the children who, as an animated movie, that's pretty much your target audience, is it art? And I would say 100% yes. Art can be entertaining. It doesn't have to be deep and emotional and rich and thematically, complicated and all this different stuff. It can be simple and fun and joyful. And for me personally, I can't really find anything to get mad at about that. This movie put a grin on my face from the first scene to the credits. And I can't really complain about a movie that does that. Sure, the movie moves extremely quickly. It doesn't give its plot lines enough time to breathe. It sets something up and then resolves it extremely quickly and moves from plot line to plot line. Sure. Could the plot have been a little bit better? Yes. And is the Illumination isms kind of in this movie, overload of extraneous pop songs that really have no place in where they're put half the time? But did it entertain me? Yes. And is that still art? Definitely. So, audiences walked away saying, that was great. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy this movie. It was a ton of fun, and I would totally recommend you see it if you haven't yet. And critics, why do critics not like it as much? Because critics can't really accept a movie that is just entertaining and fun. And that's why I don't listen to critics, period. I don't care what the critics say or if I should judge a movie based on what a certain group of people says, how good it is, or whether I should like it or not. That's a stupid idea. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. And I think that there's really nothing more to it than just being an entertaining movie, and it was super fun and enjoyable. As someone who's grown up playing Mario video games for as long as I can remember, again, I'm a teenage boy. Of course I played Mario. It was super fun and enjoyable, and I had a great time. And I'm excited to see this kind of Nintendo cinematic universe that obviously they're planning to do because they're going to make more movies. If you didn't see the post-credit scene at the end of the movie, it does set up a sequel 100%. So in the end, I definitely give it a thumbs up. But it doesn't really matter what I think. All I care about is what you think about this movie. So go ahead and let me know down below in the comments, what did you think about the Super Mario Brothers movie? Have you seen it? If after this video, do you think you might see it now? If you like this video, then you should probably consider checking out some of the other videos I have on my channel. I made a video about why the Barbie movie is going to be awesome and why Miles Morales is my favorite Spider-Man. So if you're into movies, I'd say you should probably check out a couple of those videos. You can click right here on my face to just watch the next video that YouTube recommends to you, since I know you're probably tired of seeing my face. I'm sure you're glad I covered it up. But with that said, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye.